Let's now turn to the former head of the British Army, Lord Richard Dannatt, to see what he makes of it all. Lord Dannatt, what do you make of the fact that there was nothing allocated to defence in the budget yesterday, bearing in mind, of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the activity in the Red Sea with the Houthi rebels?
Yeah, no, you ask a very good question. And I think what I found interesting was a couple of days ago, someone showed me an opinion poll on Conservative Home that said that 75% of Conservative voters would have preferred to see an increase in defence spending than a reduction in taxes. So slightly puzzles me why the Chancellor didn't pick up on that. But as you say in your introduction, there is a very strong case, even when the public finances are in a difficult position, for there to be an increase in the defence budget. A brutal land war in Europe is a real wake-up call. And not to mention what's going on in the wider Middle East, and you just mentioned the Houthis.
Is it one of those things where defence spending is not in itself a vote winner when we are not in a wartime government, and perhaps a government would only wish to spend more on defence when they find themselves actually in the throngs of war? I mean, ex-Armed Forces Minister Mark Francois has said the Defence Secretary recently warned we're moving from a post-war to a pre-war world, but nobody seems to have told the Treasury. Does Russia have to get to Warsaw before we start spending what we need to on defence? And is that the problem, Lord Dannatt, do you think?
Well, you ask a very good question. I think some of the facts, if you look a little bit back in history, rather speak for themselves. If you wait for a war to break out, the cost of fighting a war is disastrous. But there is a price to be paid for deterring war. Just a little look back into the mid-late 1930s. In 1935, we were spending less than 3% of GDP on our defence. By 1939, when war had broken out, it was 18%. And by 1940, when we were fighting for our very survival, it was 46%. That's the disastrous cost of fighting a war. So the question to ask is, should we not be paying a bit more of a premium on our insurance policy to deter war? Currently, we're spending about 2.3% of GDP. There is a strong case to put it up to 2.5% or to 3%, or even just a little bit above that, if we want to deter war and ensure peace. That really should be the responsible position of any responsible government.
And Lord Dannatt, even if it's a vote winner or not, which traditionally is not, surely the optics of increasing defence spending at a time of international unease, isn't it a bit politically naive for the Conservative government not to have jumped on that and, you know, made a big song and dance about the fact that, yeah, we're gonna shore up our defences, we're going to protect our borders and make sure that our men and women out in conflict and protecting parts of the world are well equipped?
Well, if you go back to that statistic I mentioned at the start of this conversation, 75% of Conservative voters would have preferred an increase in defence spending than tax cuts. I mean, I think what we've seen right since the end of the Cold War by successive governments is successive peace dividends being taken and the government deciding to accept more risk with our defence. Now, that's fine until the chickens start to come home to roost. And my goodness, they've been coming home in droves from Ukraine since February 2022. And it just does beg the question, do we just hope for the best or do we plan for the worst and invest properly in the deterrence capability of our armed forces to make sure that we don't have to fight a disastrously costly war?
OK, Lord Dannatt, really good to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you so much.